Welcome to the channel, guys. We are back again for another episode of WTF Did I Just Blind Buy? And today I'm going to be talking about Angel's Share by Kilian, the much anticipated release, so stay tuned for that. And if you like the content, hit that like and subscribe button, really do appreciate it. Now, I'm going to start off by saying I am a very big fan of the House of Kilian. I love the aesthetic of the brand. That's actually one of the first things that really drew me to the brand. I always liked the bottles, the presentation. It did seem very artistic, and I know that is definitely what Kilian was headed for. It didn't hurt that the first fragrance I really got my nose on, which was Black Phantom, I absolutely fell in love with on first sniff. So I have been a fan of the brand ever since, so I do like them. And this is a really anticipated release for a lot of people. This is new to the Liqueurs collection. There are two. There's Angel's Share and also Roses on Ice. I do have samples here, so I'm going to be trying Roses on Ice soon enough. But I'm going to talk about Angel's Share first. So this one I was looking forward to a lot. I love boozy fragrances, and Kilian does boozy fragrances really, really well. So they have Straight to Heaven, Single Malt, Apple Brandy. And this one has cognac, which I have always wondered to myself, or thought to myself, they really should have something with a cognac note because Kilian is, heir to the Hennessy legacy, and it just makes a lot of sense. But anyways, finally did get this one. Want to give a shout out to Maximos. He did send this to me. Of course, I paid, basically I paid and he sent me it, but he was kind enough to send me this basically at the price of retail. Sent me some samples along with that as well, so I do appreciate that as always. So just before I jump into it, I do want to give the presentation. Has this beautiful glass, so it does look like a whiskey glass. Very beautiful, very classy glass. Looks like, the whiskey, the juice is the whiskey. Cap comes off and it sprays. It is refillable, so this screws right off. And personally, I like to do this with my Kilians. I do put plumber's tape on the threads just to help with any potential evaporation and to protect the liquid from actually evaporating, which can happen if there is, if it's not airtight. So that does help a little bit with that, and that's something that I do. Cap, nice cap. It is plastic, but it's not actually that noticeable that it's different because there is liquid in the glass, and this has the cap, so it just looks like the slight difference in color just kind of looks like the difference between having liquid and not. Very nicely done. Does come in a different box. But, altogether, I think this goes really, really well with the Kilian aesthetic and one of the reasons that I fell in love with the brand. But, without further ado, let's get into it. Now, I will start by saying that this fragrance was not exactly what I was expecting, but it is still, and just to give you a quick overview, very good. I do like it. Now, this one does open up. It's opened up a lot differently depending. I've worn this several times and I've found that there is definitely a little bit of variation on my experience every time I wear it, which is nice. It keeps it interesting. But the two main ways that I find that this opens up, and especially the first time, it was very syrupy, a little bit sweet. That boozy cognac quality made a nice syrupy sweet quality, kind of like you find in something like Single Malt, although not the same. But I find that the whiskey note there, the whiskey note there does come off to me a little bit syrupy sweet. And this does a similar thing, although smelling different. And in fact, it does strike me a lot like a bit of an apple pie vibe that you do get in that opening. It has cinnamon, has this boozy accord, which makes a sort of syrupy sweet vibe. And something in it is also giving it a bit of an apple accord. That I don't always get that apple, but I definitely do get that vibe sometimes, which is really, really nice. Now, especially wearing it more, I do pick out the cognac more on the opening, and it is quite boozy. So there's a lot of, that note is very, very strong on first spray, initial spray, and for the first 5 minutes or so. And then, of course, the other notes, especially the cinnamon, starts to really creep in. The cinnamon is really, really well done. I do like that cinnamon note. I mean, cinnamon is actually, I think, one of my favorite notes, having tried more fragrances. I really like the sort of light spice that it provides. And it does have a slightly kind of gourmandy, foodish feel, being cinnamon, just because it is, I guess, used in cooking a lot, and I do like that about it. But also, I find that this fragrance it's fairly linear. It's not super complex, which isn't actually a bad thing. I would say that pretty much every time. Linear fragrances are not necessarily bad fragrances. This does go through some changes, but it doesn't really drastically change it. I get in the opening that sort of boozy cognac. The cinnamon starts to seep in, becomes a little bit more spicy. It has kind of that apple pie vibe. The cinnamon tones down, and I actually find that the cinnamon sticks around for a long time. On paper or on clothes, the cinnamon can last for days. But on my skin, I get that cinnamon note for at least, well, around the 5-hour mark, I would say. And that's actually when this fragrance does definitely change quite a bit. So that booziness lasts, 3 or 4 hours. The cinnamon note is going quite strong with it as well. And yeah, so it does have that quality that then tones down to more of a soft praline dominant fragrance. And the praline, I will say, the one thing about it is it's kind of fluffy and sweet. It does occasionally have a little bit of a rubbery vibe. So the one drawback I would say to this fragrance is that occasionally I do get a little bit of a rubbery vibe. And it's funny because I was reading people's reviews of this, and someone was saying it reminded them of Baccarat Rouge 540, which I don't actually get that at all. But to me, Baccarat Rouge 540 does smell a little bit like a latex glove. Now, thankfully, I don't really get that vibe from this. Although, like I said, sometimes when you get deeper into the dry down, 6-7 hour mark, I do sometimes pick up a little bit of a rubbery vibe, which, to me, it could remind me of Baccarat Rouge 540, but altogether, this is more of, if anything, it reminds me a lot of a couple other fragrances that I actually have here, and I feel remiss if I didn't make these comparisons. And some people have mentioned this, Ouajan. So I find that the cinnamon note is very similar. This is a much more boozy fragrance. This is like a honey cinnamon kind of fragrance. To be honest with you, I'm actually almost out of this, so it is kind of nice to have picked this up. And I find that this is very similar, or does have a similar scent DNA as that, as well as Rosé All Day. Now this, I'll say that this is a lot more complex. There's plum, there's patchouli, there's rose in this, so there is a lot more happening with this fragrance that makes it quite different. Like this fragrance is definitely doing its own thing, but at the same time, that apple pie vibe, that DNA, that amber narguile, I think, anyways, was the originator from. This definitely has a similar DNA to that. And Ouajan, Rosé All Day, Angel Share, Amber Narguile, they all have that kind of cinnamon apple pie baked good kind of a vibe. And this is actually really, really well composed, but I don't want to give you the impression that it's completely original and completely unique, because I don't think that it is. And not every fragrance needs to be 100% unique, 100% different. It is a familiar DNA done in a different way, which I do actually really like. I love that boozy opening. And, what I find is it's a lot more cinnamon apple pie than I get, say, with Ouajan, which I don't really get the apple pie. I get honey and I get cinnamon. I don't really get the honey on this. It just has a cinnamon vibe that's very similar. And this does a lot of different things compared to this. This is a little bit more straightforward, boozy apple pie, cinnamon, and then praline. Whereas this has a lot of complexity and it changes quite a bit, but it does have that beautiful syrupy apple pie opening that I think this one shares with it. But anyways, back to the point. I think I was going to say, it does last quite a long time. I know I got sidetracked there, but longevity on this is good. So, after that cinnamon vibe and after it dies down, it does last a long time. This is probably like 10 hours on my skin entirely. And it projects quite well for 3 or 4 hours, really. So it is actually pretty good, pretty strong. I sprayed this one on a test strip. And this is, for me, a good way to get an idea of projection. I'll spray it on a test strip, and I'll leave it in the room, and if I come back an hour later, it should be, well, if it's projecting really well, it'll be like the first thing I smell when I enter the room. Which is interesting because I'll just point out that I was testing Pearl Oud the other day by Kilian, and let me tell you, that one is the first thing I smelled like 5 hours later, 6 hours later. That thing is quite beast. I heard people say it's a little more subtle. I really don't think so. But this one, very strong sillage and projection for the first, 3 or 4 hours. It does settle down with the cinnamon as the cinnamon starts to taper down. This one does also, but that sort of almost musky, creamy kind of a praline vibe that this has in the dry down does last a really, really long time. So I do like this. I am happy with it. But I will be honest with you that it's not quite what I was expecting. And, for a lot of people, if they already own Wajan, Rosé Alde, or Amber Narguil, they may find that this is redundant for them. I love that DNA, and this is different than all of the other ones. So it's, like I said, it just shares that similar DNA. So anyways, Angel Share by Kilian. Looking forward to trying Roses on Ice. So, yeah, that's it for this one. Have you tried anything from the new Liquors collection? Also looking forward to new releases they have from the Liquors and what else they're bringing to the collection with these ones. So, yeah, leave a comment down below. If you tried Angel Share, you're looking forward to it, let me know. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next video.